2 months after the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong shattered America's expectations of a quick victory by launching the Tet Offensive, the Vietnam War is increasingly unpopular.
Hundreds of young men across the country are burning their draft cards this week in their commitment to resist the draft.
Are you burning your draft card?
I don't want to get killed. I don't mind getting in the Army, but you're going to go over in Vietnam and die in some rice paddy for something that not even the president can tell you what it's about.
As the U.S. military presence continues to escalate, voluntary enlistments fail to keep pace, forcing the Army to increasingly depend on the draft to fill the growing ranks.
They may call this place the home of the combat infantrymen, but it's more like a temporary home. 'Cause in a few months, all our asses are heading to Vietnam.
19-year-old draftee Arthur Wicknick is training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. For tens of thousands of recruits, the 198,000-acre complex is their last stop before Vietnam.
A month ago, the military wasn't even on my radar. I had just bought a new car, a 1968 Camaro. And I just got a new job
at an aircraft company. I was making pretty good money. And then I got a draft notice. That was such a crushing blow because I lived a comfortable life. I had everything I ever wanted, and it was going to be taken away from me. But I still had to go because all my friends were being drafted.
No matter how bad this place is, I'd still rather be here than in Vietnam. So when my commanding officer says he wants to send me to NCO candidate school to become a squad leader, I'm about to say no. Until he says, you can stay in the States 6 more months.
I said, well, then I'll do it. Because I didn't want to go to Vietnam. And then I figured within 6 months, maybe the war will be over or our involvement will be so minimal that they won't be taking anybody anymore. Unfortunately, when I went to the school, the war hadn't even reached its peak yet.
Indeed, the war Arthur Wicknick is about to enter is in fact continuing to escalate. Although the NVA and VC suffered a military defeat during Tet, they did win a psychological victory. Now, they are launching a series of small-scale attacks to further weaken American morale. For a nation already in turmoil, the shocking events of the next 5 months will nearly tear it apart.
Senator Kennedy been shot? Could this have happened?
Against this backdrop of war and domestic unrest, Republican Richard Nixon wins the presidency on the promise of restoring order at home and achieving peace abroad.
The greatest honor history can bestow is the title of peacemaker. This honor now beckons America. The chance
But as Nixon takes the oath of office, there are 537,000 American troops in Vietnam. 300 are being killed or wounded weekly. And despite the replacement of General William Westmoreland with General Creighton Abrams as the overall commander 6 months earlier, the military situation remains virtually the same. A tedious rhythm of search and destroy in which American ground forces spend weeks at a time hunting down an elusive enemy in an unforgiving terrain and then tallying the bodies of the dead. For U.S. soldiers arriving in 1969, Vietnam is the same body count-based war that it was 4 years earlier. To help relieve some of the stress on soldiers who are in continual action in the field, the U.S. military has in-country rest and recreation, or R&R, sites. Although these have existed in previous wars, Vietnam is the first time they are located in an active war zone.
If this is Vietnam, this is my kind of war. They've even got girls in bikinis.
1 month after arriving in Vietnam, Sergeant Arthur Wicknick's company from the 101st Airborne is sent for a 3-day rest.
It's great and all, but at the same time, I kind of feel guilty. Most of these guys have been out there fighting the VC for months. They deserve a chance to kick back and blow off some steam. I don't. But just as I'm starting to enjoy myself, they're shuffling us back to Camp Evans.
And something big was up, but we didn't know what it was. So we're all assembled, and our captain comes out and tells us that some of our buddies are in trouble out in the A Shaw Valley, and we're going to go in and help them. Now, I had never heard of the A Shaw Valley, but some of these other guys did. So a couple of guys were saying, "Oh my God, the A Shaw Valley." He says, the NVA drive trucks down there. We're going there? What the heck's going on?
Unknown to Wicknick, he is about to enter one of the most viciously contested regions in all of South Vietnam. Located along the Laotian border, the heavily jungled A Shaw Valley is one of the NVA's most valuable base areas in South Vietnam. It serves as a funnel for soldiers and supplies coming off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. A week earlier, a 400-man battalion of U.S. soldiers discovered 1,500 NVA dug into Hill 937, less than a mile from the border. They've been locked in intense combat ever since and are in desperate need of reinforcements to take the hill.
Right away, the supply sergeant starts shoving tons of ammo at us. We're told to double up on everything. Instead of 200 rounds of M16, take 400. Instead of 50 rounds of M60, take 100. Jesus, we really must be heading into something big. I'm trying to keep it together. But, you know, I've never been in major combat before. I mean, aside from training, I barely even fired my weapon. I don't know what I'm gonna do, other than just go with my gut and pray that it all works out. Up here, everything looks eerily picturesque. Kind of reminds me of Vermont. But I know better than that. Vietnam sure as hell is not Vermont.
Sergeant Arthur Wicknick and his company are en route to Hill 937 to reinforce U.S. troops who have been trying to dislodge the NVA for the past week. The hill is located along one of the many enemy pathways into the south. U.S. forces are attempting to cut them off.
When I glance around at the other guys' faces, they're all staring straight ahead. So I look, and I can see off in the distance
a brown mountaintop against a green backdrop, and I knew then that's probably where we're going to go.
We hit the ground as fast as we can, and we head straight towards this little command center. I can hardly believe my eyes. Filthy, unshaven GIs are everywhere. Empty ammo boxes and C rations thrown on the ground. Even the air stinks like human waste. Now I'm taking it all in when one guy points to me and he says,
Pointed at me and said,
"Hey,
hey, Sergeant, you better get those stripes off." I said, "What do you mean? I earned these." And he says, "No, you got to take them off because the enemy is shooting the leaders first, and you're going to be a target when you get out there." As he was explaining this for me to take my stripes off, another guy came over and said, "Hey, come on, Jim, let these guys be. They haven't been here yet. They don't know what it's like." Apparently, these guys have been there since the beginning of this battle that had been going on for 8 days. And then I started thinking back how we were at a picnic, drinking beer, while these poor bastards were going through this battle. I just felt awful. I wanted to get away from these guys because I didn't feel like I deserved to even be in their company.
As we settle in, I can hear these Vietnamese voices ringing out from the top of that hill. Now, nobody knows what they're saying, but the message is clear. They want us to know that they're there, and they're waiting for us.
As Wicknick and his company prepare for their assault up Hill 937, 15 miles to the west, American pilots are attempting to stop enemy advances into the south by going straight to the source of the problem, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Although diplomatic policy prohibits U.S. ground troops from entering Laos and Cambodia, where the vast majority of the trail is located, U.S. aircraft are not restricted from bombing. Despite the relentless bombing, enemy movements along the Ho Chi Minh Trail prove impossible to stop. With more than 6,000 miles of paths, the NVA simply reroute themselves around damaged areas, while a crew of 100,000 North Vietnamese laborers work round the clock on maintenance and repair. The result is that enemy forces are able to move nearly 10,000 tons of supplies every month, forcing U.S. ground troops to try to stop them in an inhospitable landscape of endless, jungle-covered hills.
Between the monsoon rain and the unbearable humidity, everyone's constantly soaked. It's bad enough we've already lost half a dozen men to the NVA. Now we're starting to lose them to jungle rot. Although after being stranded out here for 3 days, I suppose a little bad weather is the least of our problems.
23-year-old Marine Lieutenant Carl Marlantis is on Hill 400, 65 miles north of Arthur Wicknick. 3 days earlier, he and his company of 170 Marines set out to stop what they believed to be a group of 100 NVA crossing into the south via the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Instead, they stumbled into the path of an entire enemy regiment, numbering nearly 2,500.
Out here, in the middle of all this shit, it's hard to believe that just over a year ago I was at Oxford. I was only there about 5 or 6 weeks before I was feeling guilty.
Because there I was, sort of drinking beer and dating girls and having a very wonderful time. And my friends were over in Vietnam fighting. So I came to that point of, all right, you know, I can't sit here. I sort of had this feeling I was hiding behind privilege. And I couldn't do that anymore. I just woke up one morning and I said, I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna go to Vietnam. And now I'm stuck out here on some godforsaken hill. Another company's a few miles away, but the NVA have us surrounded. They're hitting us with
mortars all the time. We'd run out of water, even though it was a monsoon, and so we were trying to catch the fog in our ponchos and licking our ponchos to try and, you know, so we were in a desperate strait. And we had about 8 seconds of machine gun ammo left for each, and we divided everything evenly. We just divided everything evenly. And I remember just looking at a little patch of ground and thinking how wonderful it was just to see the earth, you know, and thinking about what will I miss, because I'll be dead.
For the first time in days, we can actually see clear skies.
Motor Kilo 6, they are off the landing zone.
Then the radio crackles to life, telling us the words we've been praying for. Choppers are on their way.
Marine Lieutenant Carl Marlantis is stranded atop Hill 400, near the Laotian border. After suffering heavy casualties during intense combat with an NVA force, he and his 170-man company have spent the past 3 days without food or supplies.
As soon as the wounded are taken care of, dozens of reinforcements start unloading cases of ammo and sea rations. God, I've never seen so many guys so happy for such a crappy meal. When I'm done eating, I head over to the skipper to get our new orders. But as he starts to speak, my entire body tenses up. He says most of the enemies moved on, except for about 100 that are still dug into the next hill over, Hill 484. Then he says that since it was our company's job to stop the NVA in the first place, it should be our company's job to take 484 now. I can hardly believe my ears. I mean, we've been stuck out here for 3 days without supplies, and now they want us to continue the assault? But the decision's already been made. We attack at dawn. As we head out to get in position, all sorts of thoughts start running through my mind. Thinking about how we're gonna take the hill. If we do it this way...
Yeah, that's a good idea, but how about if we do it this way? Well, that'll work, but this will happen. And you just try as hard as you can to come up with a solution. And you realize that there's no solution that you'll be able to do it without losing people. And I can remember seeing a very vague outline of that hill above us in the darkness. And you just go like, you know, there's people up there that I don't know, and they don't know me. And we're, in the next hour or two, we're gonna be trying to kill each other. And you just sit there and you just shake your head and wonder. It's like, I'm gonna go through this. I'm not gonna turn around and walk away. You're gonna go up the hill. And at the same time,
you're wondering, why am I going up that hill? But I already know the answer. It's because I'm a Marine. And we don't let each other down.
The sun's just peeking up over the horizon. Men whisper quietly to one another. For a moment, it's almost oddly peaceful.
Sergeant Arthur Wicknick is at the base of Hill 937 in the Oshaw Valley. He and his company have joined a battalion that for the past 10 days has been attempting to take the hill. Today, they will begin their 10th and hopefully final assault.
And then the order comes down. Fix bayonets. We're gonna kill everyone we see. And if we run out of bullets, we're gonna stab them to death.
At 8 o'clock, U.S. pilots begin a 30-minute bombardment of Hill 937. At 8:30, every American firebase within range begins 90 minutes of intense preparatory fire. At 10 o'clock, the artillery falls silent, and the ground assault begins.
So you're thinking you're gonna go up in an orderly fashion, but it's just not that way.
It's all chaos. It's all shooting. Guys start peeling off in different directions, trying to get away from whatever's happening around them.
Over all that noise, you can hear the bullets coming in. It sounds crazy. You can literally hear them hitting the dirt in front of you. And I can't figure out why the hell they're picking on me. And then I realize I never took my stripes off. They're trying to kill me because I'm a leader.
They're trying to kill me because I'm a leader. Well, I didn't have a knife. I didn't have anything. I wasn't going to cut my stripes off now. I'm too busy trying to keep from getting killed. As I got up and I just started firing at that spot again, put another magazine and get up and start firing. And the third time I went to do that, something suddenly blinded me.
And when I reach up to protect my eyes, something suddenly hits me in the chest, knocks me backwards. And for a second, all I can think is, this is it. I'm gonna die on a hill out in the middle of nowhere. But then the pain starts getting more intense.
And what had happened is this enemy soldier that was shooting at me, his first round came in, hit the dirt in front of my face, blasted the dirt in my eyes. And when I reached up his second round, it didn't penetrate my body, but it had enough power to knock me right on my ass.
There's no way in hell I'll be this lucky again. So I yell at my guys,
I want you to follow me. And I took off running. And as I ran, bullets were coming, bullets were nipping at my feet. I just started running up that hill. Jumping over abandoned bunkers, not even paying any attention to what's going on around me.
All I know is if I'm gonna survive, I've got to get to the top of that hill.
Everybody's flat on the ground, kissing dirt. If we don't find a way to take out those bunkers, we're all gonna end up dead.
Marine Lieutenant Carl Marlantis is on Hill 484. Hours earlier, he and his company began an assault against approximately 100 NVA who were dug into the hill.
I holler at one of my gunners.
And I said, you gotta engage that machine gun that's coming out of that bunker up there. You've gotta keep them busy. And he laid down and they started a machine gun duel. That machine gun shooting at him and him shooting back. And he was pumping blood because he'd been hit in the leg. And you could see the blood coming out of his leg as his heart was beating. And this kid just kept shooting. But he kept that machine gun down. And I thought, this is it. And I started running up the hill. And I thought I was all by myself.
But out of the corner of my eye, I see all my guys just seconds behind me. And when we get to the bunkers, everyone opens up.
Just seconds behind me. And we hit those bunkers, and
I start
I went
running down the line,
throwing hand grenades into them, and everybody else was coming with me, and we took the hill.
Four men from my platoon died, taking Hill 484. And every one of them was a friend.
To try and be a leader, you have to order people to do things that kills them. And that's hard. And it's usually your best guys. Because if you know it's going to be tough, you put your best guys to make sure that we get the job done, and then your best guys die. And that's always a tough one. I carry that with me.
I'm hunkered down, bracing for the next wave of gunfire. But it's strangely calm. All I hear is some rifle shots and a few hand grenades off in the distance. And then I see someone coming up, and he flashes me the peace sign. And then I realize that's my guys coming up the hill.
On May 20th, 1969, after 10 days of brutal fighting, U.S. forces successfully secure Hill 937. The cost to the U.S., 70 American soldiers killed and 372 wounded. The cost to the enemy, more than 600 killed. Although U.S. forces win the Hill and the Battle of the Body Count, the majority of the 1,500 North Vietnamese originally spotted on Hill 937 escape into Laos.
And I'm so thrilled, I don't even know what to say. I can't believe I survived. We've actually taken this bitch of a hill. But right as I'm about to sit down and rest for a second, a couple of soldiers come over to me and they say, hey, you know, they got a name for this hill. So I say, really?
What is it?
And
Well, they call it Hamburger Hill. Okay, why do they call it that? Well, because it was a human meat grinder, and that's why they gave it that name. And there's even a sign over there on that stump. So I went over and looked, and there was a sign there that said Hamburger Hill. It was stuck to a tree stump with a bayonet. And so I was looking at the sign, and I said, okay.
I see a few tiny words scrawled on a piece of paper and pinned beneath it. They read, "Was it worth it?" For a moment, I looked around at the blasted out tree stumps and the empty hollow bomb craters. And the moans of the wounded start to fill my ears. And the smell of cordite starts to burn my nose. And I just stand there thinking, was it worth it? Was Hamburger Hill really worth it? God, I certainly hope so.
The battle for Hamburger Hill near the Laotian border is over. A dozen North Vietnamese snipers were killed today.
So much for savoring victory. They're already making us pack up and leave this damn hill.
On June 5th, 1969, 16 days after heroically seizing Hamburger Hill, U.S. forces abandon it. 3 weeks later, the NVA retake the hill without a fight.
Hamburger Hill was just on a larger scale what happened all over Vietnam. So on the tactical level, it was easy to understand what our job was. On the more esoteric level, there was no objective. I mean, you think about World War II, of course my father fought and my uncles. Well, at first, you know, if you're in the Pacific, you take this island and you take that island and you get closer to Tokyo and you can sort of measure your progress. Like, oh, looks like we're winning. Or, you know, you land in Normandy and then you liberate Paris and then you go across the Rhine and you had objectives. Vietnam was the first war where it was unclear. How do you know when you've won?
On June 27th, in a groundbreaking 12-page cover story, Life magazine publishes the photographs of 242 Americans killed in Vietnam in just 1 week. Many mistakenly believe that all of the men died taking Hamburger Hill. The battle suddenly ignites a firestorm of controversy.
President Nixon, when he was running during the campaign, stated he had a peace plan. We'd like to know what it is.
We want to show Mr. Nixon that there are so many people opposed to the war that it is politically possible for him to end it now.
Senator Kennedy of Massachusetts delivered a brief speech criticizing what he called the senseless and irresponsible military pride, in which American men are sent to their deaths in pointless battles like this one for Hamburger Hill.
Although U.S. forces have fought battles like Hamburger Hill many times in the past, the American public, still traumatized by the Tet Offensive and frustrated with President Nixon for not delivering the peace he promised, comes to see the battle as representative of the entire Vietnam War, an unjustifiable loss of American lives. The cumulative effect of 4 years of graphic news coverage, an ever-increasing death toll, and the building anger over a seemingly endless war push some Americans to look for an outlet for their frustrations. For the first time in U.S. history, the American soldier will bear the burden of the public's disapproval.
And I remember my last day so clearly because I landed in Da Nang. And in Da Nang, it was like that was the airfield where you went home from. I was so filled with joy that I'd sort of escaped. I'd made it.
As soon as we get off the ground, everybody starts screaming and yelling. Everything imaginable. They're throwing stuff around, pillows, everything. Once we got airborne, the pilot says, "Gentlemen, if anybody wants a last look at Vietnam, I can go fly up the coast for a little bit." And everybody yelled out a collective obscenity at the pilot. No.
Where my brother picked me up in the airport and, tearful reunion. And then he said, well, we got to go outside now. And he said, I got to warn you, it's not going to be very pleasant out there. And I said, what? And he said, well, there's kind of trouble with protesters. And I thought, trouble? I just came from Vietnam. What's the problem?
And I just felt like $1,000,000. I'm strolling down through the terminal, my uniform, my duffel bag, my chest full of medals. I'm so proud. Nothing was going to change that mood until people started looking at me.
We go out and we got in his car and these protesters were pounding on the car with the bottoms of their signs and they were shouting at me and they were pounding on the window and snarling and calling me names and that was my welcome home. I was just sort of stunned.
And as I'm looking around, watching people, I see some people whispering, pointing at me, and all that proud patriotism I felt was just being drained away. And as that room filled up, all the seats were being filled, except the one on my left and the one on the right. People would rather sit on the floor or stand up against the wall than sit next to me. I never felt so alone, so unwanted, uncared for in my life. I just had to go home and get out of that uniform. Something I was so proud of had become something to be ashamed of.
I just had this sense of I could reach across the street and just show you that I'm just me, and that the people that, you know, you're protesting about and deriding are just, you know, kids trying to do a good job. But there was no reaching across the street.
So after my cousin picked me up and we left the airport, we drove home. And as soon as I got in the house, my father, sitting at the table, his mouth dropped. And they couldn't even, they were speechless, they couldn't talk. So I said, "Where's Mom?" She says, "Well, she's sleeping." Sleeping, it's 10 o'clock. So I go in there in the bedroom, I said, "Mom, I'm home." It was just so great to be home.